Increasing temporary visas, critical to the economic recovery. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.Heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein of coffee, because, well, let's have a look at just some notes, or a portion of this keynote speech at the AFR Business Summit in Sydney by our Prime Minister, particularly his comments surrounding increasing temporary visas, or the importance of temporary visas for regional employment, regional workers. And if we scroll down here, I've highlighted the bit I want to read. So, we have a look here. So, ABA's estimates that the impact of COVID-19 has resulted in a workforce shortfall of around 22,000 workers in horticulture alone, and he's discussing just the impact, the decline in itinerant workers, either backpackers or people from overseas coming to Australia to work in our agricultural industry, fruit picking, those type of things. And well, people aren't taking those jobs, and we've seen how that's going to have a flow-on effect to increase in the cost of our foodstuffs here. So despite targeted measures to incentivize Australian job seeker recipients to relocate to where jobs are, $6,000 to move there and take the job, $6,000. $6,000, everyone. They were giving people incentives to go and work there. Unemployed Australians are simply and regrettably not filling these jobs. Now, there's mixed things you can hear. We've had a look at examples where some of these jobs, the conditions were quite, frankly, shocking. Where, you know, they expect you to live on the farm and to pay all these costs for it. I wonder if that's to get around a fringe benefit tax for providing accommodation. Maybe they should allow some of the income earned in these fruit picking jobs to be tax-free, or increase the tax-free threshold in some regional areas. Maybe if we had special economic zones where the government stepped back and gave people, you know, more ability. That might create incentives for people to pack up bags and go for these jobs. Right now, there are 54,000 jobs going in regional Australia. And remember, at the moment, according to Roy Morgan, we have unemployment and underemployment at over 20%. Michael McCormack, the DPM, will tell you, if you give him half a second of any day of the week, and he's right, 54,000 jobs are out there right now in regional Australia that they can't fill. And every day we hear the stories of employers, especially in regional areas, unable to fill positions. It's got way past anecdotal. The knock-on effect of critical skills shortages also forces up prices for consumers, increasing the cost of living for Australians in our cities. That's how it impacts Australians at home right now. This is the problem. We don't have a culture now of moving for work anymore. In the past, people would move around for the work, particularly in these lower skill jobs. Right now, we're all dependent on backpackers coming in and doing it. A little spoiled in some ways. If we can't get the workers in our regional areas, then the price of your groceries goes up. And so it's in all of our interests to address this very important issue. I mean, what if they had community housing there? They need to create other incentives for people to even just relocate temporarily to these areas. I think removing fringe benefit tax and allowing the farmers to include a lot of these other costs associated, you know, in accommodation and foodstuffs as part of the package deal. Why not? So this is the response. Firstly, to strengthen the mutual obligation requirements for job seekers receiving the job seeker payment. So they're going to make it tougher on people on the dole. Now, we recently took this action to announce several weeks ago by the Minister Cash, in tandem with the recent increase in the job seeker payment, and that's a fair exchange. If there is a job available and you're able to do that job, then it is reasonable for taxpayers to expect that you will take it up rather than continue to receive benefits. And if you don't, then payment should be withdrawn. But that won't be enough to fix this problem. This problem goes pre-pandemic. We must also relook at the role the temporary visa holders play in meeting our economy's workforce requirements, where Australians do not fill these jobs. Of course, we want Australians to fill these jobs. Of course, this is our first priority. But we also need to understand that by looking at these areas, We need to see that rather than taking Australians' jobs, we need to instead appreciate how filling critical workforce shortages with temporary visa holders can actually create jobs elsewhere in the economy, and in particular, sustain growth and services in our regional economies, and that Australians get a net benefit. It's a value add to the equation. Well, if your foodstuff is going up and the poorest people are going to be the ones affected by it, and then you can decrease the cost of foodstuffs by having people coming in there, I can appreciate how they can make this argument, how people can receive a benefit. But still, you know, why are we flying people in from other countries to work in these jobs when we could bus people in from the cities? You know, if you don't want to do these type of jobs, then you need to improve on your skills and try and find other work to do. It's not the end of the world, is it? I honestly think this whole farming and fruit picking thing, I think it'll disappear. And I know some of them, the conditions are terrible. But what'll happen eventually is you'll just get flying drones picking fruit. It'll get to the point where it's, you know, you'll have little cheap drones will fly, boom, pick, a fleet of them. We'll do a whole farm. You know, just wait. It'll happen. And then there'll be all complaints about all the jobs are being lost to these, to the robots. So, I assure you this, I mean, if you had a business, think about it, if you had a business and you could go to a, you know, an orchard and say, we'll pick all your fruit, you know, we'll get 90% hit, we'll deploy our fleet. You know, we get a cut of whatever you make, share of the produce, you know, solar powered charging station. I mean, yeah, surely there should be a market for that. So, I assure you this issue will not go away when the pandemic ends. It's a thorny issue for us to deal with, and we must. We must become a world leader in D&D. In just the first 8 weeks of the pandemic, consumers and business digital adoption vaulted 5 years forward. Post-COVID, we'll need to keep our foot on the digital accelerator. Now, this requires governments to adopt a different mindset to regulation. Yeah, you've got to step back from regulation. You've got to get freedom to people. But see, you know, look at this. I mean, data needs reforming. I mean, the data rules and all of the stuff here in Australia is ludicrous. You go through a airport here and they can take your phone and get all the data. And you never know when it's going to be destroyed. And that could mean if you're working with European clients, you're in breach with some of the requirements there. So let's have a look at some of the questions that were asked after this speech, because there's a few good ones here. You know, so let's look what Phil Corey wrote, or asked. Thank you very much, Prime Minister. My name is Phil Corey, and I'm the political editor of the Australian Financial Review. We've only got time for a couple of quick ones, so if I could just ask you about, I think, an interesting aspect of your speech about the migration. Your comments on migration, temporary visa holders. Would you, it is early days, but would you let us know into your thinking? Would you be looking at changing the overall migration cap to allow in more skilled temporary migrants, or just change the migration mix? What's your thinking? So you can see what he's aiming at here. We're going to see an increase in migration into Australia, everyone. So, the Prime Minister. Well, temporary migration isn't capped. There you go. I mean, what do you think, everyone? If someone comes over here and then they settle and they build a life, it's a little different than someone coming, working, and leaving. It's demand-driven and always has been. But it is really about the design of the classes of the visas and the Ag 2030 strategy, which has been developed by David Littleproud. I think will play a key role in particular in how these visas can address workforce challenges in the agricultural sector in particular. But it is not just about the ag sector. Anyone who runs a hospitality business will be aware of these issues, and particularly if they're operating one in regional Australia as well. I mean, backpackers play an important role in the process, but our systems to date have not been as direct as they might be. So all I'm saying really is that I've got a very open mind on this. We have tried in the past to first get Australians into these jobs, and I've tried to do that with any number of incentives, and I'm sure Peter Costello remembers the things they were trying 2 decades ago. It has just been incredibly difficult, and we have to call it as it is. And that is when Australians won't do these jobs. The jobs still need to be done. Well, the problem is your welfare's too generous. That's what's going to happen. If the disincentive, if going to work and the extra money is just not worth it, welfare's too generous. The jobs still need to be done, and I can't have, as is occurring, horticulturists ploughing their product or produce back into their fields because they can't get the workers. That is a tragedy for our economy, and particularly for those producers. So this is a clear area where I think we're going to have to lean more forward on. And I mean, has there ever? I know they've had regional tax, tax deals for some of the region, tiny little savings you could get. But imagine if you went out there and you were long-term unemployed, or even if you, let's just throw this out here, long-term unemployed for 6 months. You could go and work on fruit picking, and if you did it for 6 months, you didn't have to pay any tax. You got all that money tax-free. Would that be an incentive? What if we thought about things like that? And then people will get a taste of working, a taste of earning money. Why not? Then that's enough time to actually build relationships in those communities. You don't know what could happen there. So, not at the expense of Australian workers, as I said. If you've got a missing link in your workforce, then that actually impedes growth in your economy, which costs the economy jobs. It costs those businesses those opportunities. And so I see this as a value add in the end of the day. And we're going to have to make our case on this. But the regional members of my teams, my national colleagues who sit in the cabinet, the Liberal members from right across Australia, have been very consistent on this view. They're not thinking outside the box. They're just doing the same old thing. We need some fresh thinking here. We need some innovative approaches. It all is just the same stuff. It goes back and forth, back and forth. You'll get the people going, the South Park stereotype. They took my jobs. They took my jobs. Well, there's a whole lot of disincentives for people getting in there. You kind of pretty much have to force backpackers to do these crappy jobs. So how can we create it to make it more of an incentive? How can we, they're trying to give people $6,000 to relocate to these areas. What else can we do? So the follow-up question. What would be the conditions tied to these visas, though? You'd have to go to the regions. Would there be the lure of permanent residency perhaps at the end? The Prime Minister's responding. I think you have all of these options that you've considered, and you need to think about their broader impact on population growth. I mean, obviously, bloody hell, he's politicians. I mean, obviously, we're not going to see any of these at the moment. But yeah, that conditionality is one of the great advantages of the temporary visa system. As a former immigration minister, I know it pretty well. You can't put conditions on permanent visas about where people can live. Rightly, you're a resident. You're a citizen. You're a citizen. You can go where you like, not if you're locked in your state. But if you're on a temporary visa, you're here on conditions, and those conditions can help us direct where people can go. Yes, okay, you can do it by... Okay, this is one strategy. You can do it by forcing people to go there, by having these rules on these visas. So you're really taking advantage of these vulnerable people coming to do these shit jobs, or you could create special economic regions where it incentivizes people to freely make the choice there to move. So, I mean, they've announced $1.2 billion for apprentices. So, there you go, everyone. Visas are a big part of at least this, trying to address the agricultural industry and the economic recovery here in Australia. What do you reckon? Do you think they'll open up the migration floodgates? Anything they can to prop up property. If they can do it here in the regions, what do you think they'll do in the universities? Anyway, let me know your thoughts and opinions and your take on this. What would you suggest to get people working in these jobs? What could we do? Throw some different thinking here. It has to happen. I mean, you can't... There has to be a point where... I also think it's a little hard for some Australians actually to get these jobs. I think some of the farmers don't want them. They probably would rather have the backpackers or the people that probably don't have the same expectations of conditions. That's just the way it is. What do you reckon? Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe to the channel. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. If you're a fan of the channel and enjoy the content I create here, there are a few ways you can support us. You can join us on YouTube or Patreon. You can support us using our affiliate links from Amazon, eBay, Independent Reserve, or AussieBroadband. You can buy merch from HeiseSays, use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, or support us via PayPal. Take care, everyone. Have a great day. I will see you next time. Bye for now.